The holographic display cast the only color in the room. Deep arterial red, rotating slowly above the scan table. Inside the magnified cross-section of a human femur, something was moving, building. Dr. Corvan's 4 fingers hovered beneath the display, trembling in a way she could not override. Nurse Athelk had stopped writing 9 minutes ago. On the table, Declan Marsh sat with his legs dangling, chewing his thumbnail. "So is that normal, or—" She did not answer. The Marrow was producing cells her database had no classification for. What you just saw inside that bone, most species never develop anything like it. If you want to find out what the doctor discovers next, subscribe to the channel and stay close. Now, back to 3 hours before that satisfying moment turned to dread. 3 hours earlier, the hardest problem in MedLab 4 had been a clogged sterilizer drain and a plumber who showed up to fix it with a cracked knuckle he wouldn't let anyone examine. Declan Marsh, station plumber, broad shoulders that barely cleared the lab doorframe, tool belt slung low, a work order pulled up on his wrist display. He'd dropped to one knee beside the sterilizer's access panel before Corvan had even finished explaining the drainage issue. She noticed the knuckle while he worked, swollen across the 4th metacarpal of his right hand, the bone slightly misaligned beneath the skin, an old fracture, badly healed, or rather healed without intervention of any kind. "Your hand," she said. "That's a 4th metacarpal fracture. When was this treated?" He didn't look up from the pipe coupling. "Wasn't. Punched a wall when I was 19. It healed on its own." On its own. Corvan's stylus stopped moving across her datapad. Among the Zalathi, a fractured bone was a permanent crisis. Surgical fusion with synthetic mineral compound was the only path to structural restoration. Without it, the bone necrotized within days. She had read in outdated galactic survey files that humans could supposedly self-repair skeletal damage, but the claim had always sat in the same category as unverified folklore. She had never scanned one. She asked if she could. Declan shrugged, one shoulder rising and falling like it cost him nothing. "Sure, got nothing else while the drain cycles." He climbed onto the scan table the way someone sits on a park bench. Standard bone density sweep. She ran the femur first. Largest bone, cleanest data. The results populated the holographic display in pale blue columns, and Corvan read them twice before she trusted them. Density, 1.2 grams per cubic centimeter. Zalathi average, 0.7, nearly double. She recalibrated the scanner. A same result. She moved to the cracked knuckle, the 4th metacarpal. The old fracture line appeared on the display, a faint seam in the bone's architecture, but surrounding it, layered over it, woven through it. New bone. The human body had detected the break, flooded the site with calcium and collagen, and reconstructed the structure without surgery, without synthetic input, without any external intervention at all. Corvan magnified the repair site. The new bone was denser than the original. "Your body overbuilt the repair," she said, and something in her voice made Athelk look up from his notes. Declan glanced at the display like someone checking a weather report. "Yeah, it does that. Broke my arm at 14. Healed crooked, so the doctor re-broke it and let it set again. Same thing, came back harder." He said this the way one might say the weather had been mild. There's a moment in every xenobiologist's career when the data stops making sense. And if that feeling just made you lean closer, subscribe so you don't miss where this goes. Corvan pulled up the deep marrow cavity. Full scan. Magnification at 400 times. The holographic display shifted from structural imaging to cellular activity, and the lab filled with the soft red glow of living marrow, rendered at a scale where individual cells became visible. And that was when her hands stopped trembling, not because the data had resolved, but because the trembling had passed into something deeper, something her body did not have a motor response for. Inside the marrow cavity, hematopoietic stem cells producing at a rate she had never recorded in any scanned species, billions upon billions, but production volume was not what pinned her 4 fingers to the edge of the display console. It was what they were producing: white blood cells, standard, or red blood cells, expected. But there was a third production line, cells Corvan did not recognize from any species index in the Galactic Medical Database. She expanded the view. They were not attacking anything. They were not mounting a defensive response. They were circulating through the marrow cavity in deliberate, organized patterns, and every time one of them encountered a foreign microbe, station bacteria, skin flora, the airborne particulate, it did something that made Athelk's stylus slip from his fingers and clatter against the floor. It cataloged it. The cell wrapped the microbe, disassembled its protein structure, and then Corvan had to replay the scan feed twice to believe what she was seeing. It rewrote its own surface receptors to match. A permanent targeted record, a biological counterweapon, built in real time and stored indefinitely. Human bone marrow, she now understood. Produced approximately 500 billion blood cells per day, but a subset of those cells, the ones her database couldn't classify, were not soldiers. They were archivists. They encountered a pathogen once, broke it down to its molecular signature, and built permanent memory of it. Every disease this man had ever survived was filed somewhere in his skeleton. Every infection, every fever, every childhood illness had been cataloged, countered, and stored. No Zalathi had this. No scanned species in the database had this. Every illness Corvan's people faced was fought from zero. No recognition, no memory, no adaptation. Humans fought once and remembered forever. The marrow wasn't just producing blood. It was constructing a library, a biological weapons archive that expanded with every pathogen it survived, and it never, ever deleted an entry. Corvan turned from the display. Her 4 fingers were still trembling, and she could not make them stop. "Mr. Marsh," she said, "your bone marrow is constructing autonomous pathogen-specific hunter cells with permanent tactical memory." She heard the pitch of her own voice and did not recognize it. "Your skeleton is manufacturing biological weapons." Declan stopped chewing his thumbnail. He looked at the rotating display, the magnified marrow, the cells moving in their quiet, relentless patterns. Then he looked at her. "Yeah, that's..." He scratched the back of his neck. "Oh, I think that's called an immune system." He said it like a question, like he wasn't sure why she was upset. And now, back in this same lab, under the same cold light, with the same display still rotating above an empty scan table, Corvan sat at her console and typed the report she had been composing in her head for 2 hours. Species, human, Terran. Subject, Declan Marsh, age 28, station plumber. The bone density, 1.2 grams per cubic centimeter, 171% of Zalathi baseline. Self-repair capability, confirmed. Fracture sites rebuild denser than original structure. Marrow production rate, approximately 500 billion cells per day. Immune memory duration, permanent. Her fingers trembled over the final line. She typed it anyway. Classification note: human bone marrow functions as an autonomous biological weapons laboratory with infinite adaptive capability. Every pathogen encountered is cataloged, countered, and remembered. The system does not forget. The system does not stop building. She moved the cursor to the species classification field, where the current entry still read fragile, and replaced it with a term she had to invent, because the existing taxonomy had no category for what she had witnessed. Self-upgrading biological platform. She submitted the reclassification request. Athelk, standing 3 steps behind her, still had not picked up his notepad. Medlab 4 was quiet now. The sterilizer worked. Declan had finished the drain while waiting for his results, then left 20 minutes ago, said, "Thanks for the scan," the way someone thanks a barber for a trim. The holographic display still turned in the empty room. Inside the Marrow, the cells were still building, still learning, still cataloging every microbe in the station's air that had passed through his lungs during the 45 minutes he'd sat on that table. In the corner of the display, the cracked knuckle image rotated slowly, healed, overbuilt, denser than it had ever been before the break. Corvan's notation blinked beneath it in small clinical text. They break, they come back stronger, they do not consider this remarkable. The display kept turning, the cells kept building. The plumber was already 2 decks down, fixing someone else's pipes. So what unnerves you more? That his body builds weapons out of every sickness it survives, or that he didn't even know it was extraordinary? If that question is still sitting in your chest, subscribe, because tomorrow's story finds something even stranger hiding in plain sight inside a human being.